Kanyon, what kind of necklace is that?
It is abalone. It's my traditional regalia. It's abalone, pine nut, and clamshell. What also would be on our regalia is olivella biplaccata, which would be in these discs shape. However, this is clam. And it's local regalia from Ohlone territory, and that is Silicon Valley, Central Coastal California, my ancestral homelands.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, it's 7:05. I think people might still keep trickling in, but I think it'll be good for us to go ahead and start. So yeah, welcome again, everybody. This series is called Enjoy the Process. And, you know, with all the uncertainty that we're facing in the world right now, and just all of the propaganda and media really drowning out what's real for us, I wanted to offer a service to the global community in ways that we can really come to center, and that we can really find our voice and figure out what's real for us, and also figure out ways that we can, or things that we can do from home, and ways that we can, you know, increase our capacity for wholeness and fulfillment from where we are. So with that being said, we're going to start with a gentle introduction between Kanyon, myself, and Robin. And then I'm going to lead us into a little meditation. And then from there, we'll begin sharing, and then end up into an open discussion between the three of us, kind of weaving it all together. And then we really want to honor your time for joining us here and open the floor for more discussion and questions and answers, and just to address anything that you guys may be going through. So that being said, Kanyon, do you want to go ahead and do a short introduction of who you are and what you're doing here?
Yes. Mishmin Tuhis, Kanarkat Kanyon, Coyote Woman, Sayers Ruth. Good day. My name is Kanyon Coyote Woman, daughter of tribal chairwoman Anne Marie Sayers of Indian Canyon Nation. My ancestral homelands are in Indian Canyon, San Benito County, Hollister, south of Gilroy and San Jose, in Ohlone territory. Ohlone is a misnomer, but I'm a proud Ohlone person. I'll get into that later. CEO of Kanyon Consulting LLC, a consultation firm dedicated to bridging the gap between Indigenous and contemporary value systems. I am a two-spirit, Indigenous, activist, artist, edutainer that's very active in the Bay Area, in San Francisco Bay. I have many titles, and I have a wonderful list of accolades. What brought me here to the circle is I have a permaculture certificate from Earth Activist Trainers. I, being a consultant, want to bring in Indigenous perspectives into these conversations, given that many times Indigenous values and teachings tend to be cherry-picked, and due diligence and honoring truth and history is not always considered. And I'm really excited to be in conscious community, and we're all working because we are all acknowledging in these steps that we are all impacted by colonization, and when we start becoming familiar with why things came to be and why things are the way they are, and how we can honor truth and history, we can take strategic steps towards building a sustainable future. But that means we need to be accountable and looking back and honor the past to shape the future. So I'm humbled to be in this circle of community members. And yeah, my pronouns, she, they, coyote. And at the end of this, we'll probably be posting to the Facebook group links and bio and all the fun extra juicy information about diving in to find out who I am, besides what I could just talk at you. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Let me unmute myself for a minute here. Thank you so much, Kanyon, for being here with us and sharing all the insights and just everything that you represent. We're excited to have you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Robin, do you want to go ahead and give yourself an introduction, brother?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Kanyon. I'm really excited to hear what you have to share tonight with all of us, and thanks everyone for being here and tuning in. Yeah, I'm just really excited about everything that's going to unfold over the next couple of hours, and also ongoing beyond tonight too, from this topic and this amazing amalgamation of wisdom and information. So my name is Robin Liepman. I go by Bloom, which is a name I got during a vision quest. It was a backpacking, wilderness therapy, personal growth, and eco psychology course that I did in college. And we did a 2.5-day vision quest in nature, solo with no food. And it was actually 3.5-day vision quest. And then we all came back with the nature name, and then that stuck with me. And for me, Bloom connects me with both the earth and blooming of the planet, and also the blooming of human potential. I was studying psychology and cognitive science at the time. So let's see. It looks like when someone joins, Tammy, could you just mute yourself and then, yeah, perfect. So yeah, in college at UC Santa Cruz, I studied psychology and cognitive science. And then when I graduated, I started traveling and landed on a permaculture farm in Nicaragua called Bona Fide, where I learned for a month just all about permaculture in a hands-on way, in a very Socratic way, where I was asked questions so I could come up with solutions on my own rather than just being taught everything. And then that journey led me to eventually doing my permaculture design course with Starhawk, just like Kanyon did. So I did an earth activist training with Starhawk. The course I did was up on Vancouver Island, and it was both a permaculture design course, an earth activist training, and an earth magic course. So we were learning all sorts of amazing things, all of the curriculum in a permaculture design course, plus all the things that Starhawk had to teach. And then within the next couple of years after that, I was a teacher's assistant for Starhawk's permaculture design course a few years later, as well as a teacher's assistant for a permaculture design course in Maui with Jenny Pell. And that was a program mostly for students at Evergreen College, so they were getting college credit for doing the permaculture course. And then I also did my permaculture teacher training with Jude Hobbs in Oregon. And so beyond that, I've done a ton of permaculture action events. I put on a permaculture tour in 2015 called Blooming Biodiversity, where I met some of the people on this call, like Ken, for example. And I had a group of about 25 people going down the West Coast through Canada, Washington, Oregon, and California, putting on permaculture action events everywhere we went, with music and yoga and all the things you would find at a festival to bring more people to it. But each day we were doing hands-on gardening, permaculture actions, and it was an amazing experience. And we ended with actually a little festival called Mycelium. So it's like a play on words with mycelium and Om. So it was a music, yoga, permaculture camp out in the desert in Josh Retreat. And then since then, I've just put on a bunch of other permaculture events, as well as more recently some mycelium action days with focus on learning about mushrooms and doing actions with micro-remediation and growing mushrooms. And so currently I'm in Costa Rica, and yeah, a lot more to share, but that's the permaculture side. I also do event organization and music. So I'm excited to share for tonight all the permaculture stuff that's going to help you with where you are right now.
Wow, thank you so much. You guys are both epic humans, man. So excited to share in this space with you guys, and thank you for all that you're bringing, and I really look forward to hearing what you have to share. So hello, everyone. My name is Sky Matiyosh. My name was given to me, Fire Sky, at my birth by a Hopi elder, and I was born into a community called Kokopelli Ranch, where I was raised with indigenous teachings of the Hopi, mixing with Lakota as well. And through my life, it's just been a lot of crisis and a lot of turmoil that I've had to shift with. So I kind of feel like I've been preparing for this global pandemic that we're facing my whole life. And I struggled with addiction really, really badly to meth and coke from 14 to 22 years old, which then I was able to recover from through the use of sacred plant medicines, and then became my journey of self-discovery. I traveled to South America for 2 years, living with different indigenous tribes from the Andes to the jungles, and just learning all about their cosmology and their rituals, and really learning what it feels like to live with the first communities of this world that are still holding true to their traditions to this day. And it gave me a big sense of connecting to people on a really more deeper level, on a soul level. And from that point, I wanted to learn all I could about holistic health, and about psychospiritual wellness, and about integration, and about how we can really familiarize ourselves with the baseline of our needs to be fulfilled in our life, and to how to share that with other people. So long story short, I came back to the States and studied at the College of Ayurveda for 3 years. And here, let me mute you real quick, Robin, sorry. For 3 years, and just got into all the subtle aspects of energetics of our bodies, of detoxification, lifestyle, and all the things. And just recently graduated from Being True to You, which is a really incredible program designed by Deanne Adamson and Dr. Dan Engel. And we specialize in addiction recovery and entheogenic integration. So the work that I do now is all around transformational psychospiritual processes, and really just getting into the muck and into, you know, the shadow aspects of ourselves that we're really afraid to face and to look at. And for me, I've found personal empowerment through being able to learn processes in ways that I can turn all of my trauma and suffering into a benefit, and into gaining leverage for me to know who I really am, and to find out the truth of who I am, and really be able to orient myself into my genuine expression. And so there was a lot of people reaching out for support and help, and I was really pushing beyond my scope of how much I could hold. And I had to kind of draw back and, you know, really only help a certain amount of people. So I wanted to do this as a sentiment and as a service to other people who may still be struggling and having a hard time with everything that we're facing. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell. There's a lot more to be shared as time goes on. But for now, I'm really grateful that we're all here. And thank you again to everyone for taking this time out of your day to join us. And with that being said, I'd like to join us, or lead us, into a little meditation. So I'd like us all just to join in unison as we connect with our inner bodies. And go ahead and close our eyes, taking 4 deep, slow, cleansing breaths. Inviting us to let go of the mind and to bring us to the world within. Relaxing the eyelids, gently relaxing your jaw, allowing it to hang, letting go of all of our facial muscles, releasing the weight of the body onto the contact area where we're sitting, and allowing the fullness of our weight to be supported by the couch, the floor. Thoughts, images, and static may bubble up. We simply watch without getting involved, resting in this aware spaciousness. Simply noticing the inner silence, the inner spacious, formless silence. All our feelings, agitation, sounds, all the images, they're bubbles floating through this spacious, aware silence. We're not focusing into anything. What we're doing is the opposite of focusing. zooming out of the aperture, bringing our attention and tuning into the background of this space, the background of isness. This needs no effort or concentration. It doesn't need effort to be what we are. So while resting in this spaciousness, we fully invite in what's arising, watching with this benevolent indifference, and we welcome all these realms, not just thoughts, not just sensations, but thoughts, sensations, and sounds, watching with this compassionate indifference. There's always this choice that we have. We can go along with stories and the images and sensations, or we can choose to rest into what we really are, into this open, empty, aware container of the self. And while having this global view of the situation, uninvolved and resisting nothing, let us welcome in this moment together. Thank you so much, family. Welcome. I would like to invite Kanyon to share what's in her heart, share what's real for her, and share what's real in the world right now.
I'd like to offer a song to start us off. Right here, right now, I am standing in Mutsun Ohlone territory, acknowledging the land where we are by becoming familiar with the history of these spaces and places in post-colonial settler mentality is one step to honor truth and history. So by acknowledging the land, it can help us ground ourselves. And so I'm on the outskirts of my homelands. Like my home is a little ways south of here, but I want to offer a grandmother song. This grandmother song honors and acknowledges our grandmothers, their grandmothers, and an all Mother Earth, for without them and without her, we would not be here. We share this time and space together for a reason. So it's with that humility, that gratitude, that present-mindedness that I offer this song in this space, digitally, offering this to our community. And it's important that we acknowledge where these songs come from. This song is my song. It came to me differently than it was taught. I am a California Native woman, Mutsun, Chumash. I have Euromut ancestry as well that I'm still learning more about, because even over there, Indigenous communities before colonization. And when I try to sing a traditional grandmother song with a Chumash mentor of mine, I can only support sing that song. And when I try to sing it independently, this song came out. And this song is meant to be shared in community spaces, intertribal, international community members, multicultural communities. And it's to ground ourselves, to honor our grandmothers. And so in my community, our words of affirmation are "oh." Some of us may say amen or ashe. Some people in other territories, other indigenous communities say aho. My community says oh, so I'll say oh at the end, and you're welcome to join in letting that out where you are releasing the air. So this is Kanyon's grandmother's song. I'm going to use my regalia as an instrument. Mine moi ai o kunali. Moi moi o kano. Moi moi o ko. Moi moi no. Moi moi o ko. Moi moi o nahe ai o kunali. Moi moi ai o kunali. Oh, 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 oh. No son. In breath, so it is in spirit. So, hey everyone. Thank you. I am happy to be here. There are times that some community members of the Bay Area may see me in some present spaces. Sometimes I get to be a keynote. Sometimes people just love me for that song. There are times that as a Native person, I'm tokenized. So I utilize that opportunity as a foot in the door. And I then flip the script. So as frustrating as that can be as a Native person, people's just saying, hey, can you come and do land acknowledgements? Can you come and help us with this particular thing for your voice? I'm like, okay, what can I do with this opportunity? And sometimes many of our community members, they don't know what they don't know. And so for one, I recognize that I am a very privileged California Native woman. I was born and raised in Indian Canyon, the only federally recognized Indian country along central coastal California in 350 miles. It is federally recognized Indian country because it is a trust allotment land. So the closest federally recognized tribe and land is Rohnert Park up by Sonoma, on all the way down towards Santa Barbara, Santa Ynez, and that's both for federally recognized people and land. I myself am a Mutsun Ohlone woman, and we are not federally recognized tribally. No perks, none of that. And humans of America tend to love to make assumptions about Native peoples, and it can be quite frustrating. There are times that some community members will say that I'm angry, angry Native, and I'm fine with that. I will use the energy from that frustration to continue doing what I'm doing. And I say that I will do what I can, when I can, where I can, however I can, for as long as I can, to honor truth in history, to honor my ancestors to the best of my ability, and to be a good ancestor in training. And so by my recognizing that I'm a privileged California Native woman, able to say that I have been born and raised on the land of my ancestors, where my grandmothers have always been from, and where culture sharing and respecting Indigenous protocol by people coming and visiting, offering gifts, and seeking permission to be on the land, to pray on the land, to be present in our community, to witness that as a normal occurrence in California in 2020 is a unique privilege, and I'm blessed for that opportunity. In these times that we are now slightly confined and having less freedoms, some of us might be checking in on some of our privileges and some of those opportunities where we've had access. And it can be easy to navigate how frustrating or hard it can be. And I tend to remind myself, like, hashtag first world problems with some of the frustrations that I have. I'm like, oh, I wish I could be hugging my friends and holding my friends and visiting and doing certain things that were considered normal. And I'm like, wait, I always complained about capitalism and consumerism. So the normal, like, example of me going to a cafe wasn't actually very helpful or productive. So I'm checking myself in these moments, in these times, we're officially spring now in 2020 with this quarantine and these behaviors of, well, I'm excited about this shift. I'm optimistic. As a California Native woman, I make myself available to my community. I tend to say that I'm of service to the community to the best of my ability. And sometimes I use my passion, that fervor, that flustering coyote energy to voice sometimes the indiscrepancies in some of these efforts that us in community have, i.e. like permaculture and in intentional communities where we cherry pick convenient elements, but without having a grounded understanding of some of those teachings, modalities, and pedagogies. I myself am not a master of any of these things, but I also know that we in today's post-colonial settler mentality in what we call the Americas, we have been raised in an environment that has been impacted by colonization and then impacted by post-industrial era and capitalism, consumerism, resource extraction, and this energy of entitlement, this flurry of behaviors that have been hurting the earth. And I'm seeing the earth heal today. I'm seeing clear skies today. And some of us might be seeing rain. So, I mean, I'm seeing cleaner areas around me. And it pains me that some of us may not learn from this. And many of us who are recognizing this, I find it really beautiful that we are finding opportunity to be in community together. And hopefully through our efforts of connecting with other communities and sharing these truths that we learn, we can be that change that we want to see. So my presence in this circle and in this work is to offer myself and perspectives and teachings and the influence that my mentors have had on me, and maybe even some of the sadness, beauty, strength, anger of ancestors that I carry with me, and those in the next generations that I have to recognize that my actions will impact. With all of those elements and energies present within me, that I try and use my voice to bring awareness. And so there might be days in the future and or recordings of the past that you may witness of me expressing certain things, and I would love to have conversations about them. I'm open to beings checking me on the past recordings, and then also challenging me to strengthen how I present myself currently and towards the future, because I have been speaking out here in the Bay Area. I have to point it out. Here in the Bay Area, one, the Native peoples are called Ohlone, and that's a misnomer, and it's due to colonization. And that being said, if the word Ohlone was used in the 1800s onward, and people then say the Ohlone tribe, are they actually honoring pre-contact history? And I, as a Native person, I also say I am a proud Ohlone person because that is who I identify today as. So if someone is going to be a teacher about this topic, I think that they should do due diligence to talk about it. And the same goes to when we are afforded opportunities to learn, i.e. permaculture or shamanic wisdoms, sorry, that we learn how this has come to be. I am not against people practicing earth-based spiritual practices. I'm not against culture sharing and engaging in these practices, beliefs, and wisdoms. I am against a capitalistic endeavor of selling and profiting off of this, i.e. in Berkeley, core shamanism. And so I'm going to always be an element of honor, truth, and history. And let's ground ourselves in recognizing how we got here. And I myself, I'm a mixed being. I'm Native passing. And I have fun with it. And coming to today, coming to these times, we desperately need to be in community together. We need to have these difficult conversations. As a Native person, I see my Native community who are upset about beings that they witness who are capitalizing off of spiritual practices, and the Native community that I know are hurt and they haven't been heard, and their anger is valid towards that community. At the same time, I recognize that communities who gravitate towards Indigenous teachings, pedagogies, have that gravitational pull because I honestly believe that their ancestors are calling them home. All of us have earth-based spiritual practices of which our ancestors practiced. And when we recognize that when we are all honoring truth in history, all of us have been impacted by colonization. All of us have Indigenous lineages in our veins from all the homelands of our ancestors. And all of our ancestors shared culture and connected with each other. So therefore, us learning and reconnecting to these things are true callings. It's how we go about it. It's how we walk with this knowledge and these opportunities. It's how we look in on ourselves, be it to check our privileges, to work with that shadow work, but also to take steps towards how are we going forward in the future? How are we acknowledging how our words and our actions impact not only ourselves, our families, our communities, our environment, but 7 generations in the future? And when we start thinking about how that impact is, we can take steps of consideration. And so we do here in this world need community members who are stewards of the land. And when we honor our ancestors, we can recognize our community has always been stewarding the land. We've lost that connection, that regard and that kinship to our responsibility to nature, our humility to recognizing our responsibility. Like culture sharing or storytelling, my elders share with me that humans were the last. The animals are the first beings, the first people, First Nations of the earth. And so by becoming familiar with truth and history and grounding ourselves and recognizing the history of these places that we benefit from, that we call home, that we call these spaces that we're rooted to, is how we can start getting grounded. And it pains me to see how this virus has impacted our communities, especially those who are on reservations, my Indigenous relations across Turtle Island, Indigenous communities from other spaces, Indigenous communities from below the border. And I'm getting disheartened every time I look up information, finding out new numbers of both people who are infected and people who have passed away and taken their journey way too soon. I will share a couple of links that I have learned from, because I'm dyslexic, I'm neurodivergent. I will butcher numbers from the updated files. So I recommend that you become familiar with the communities that are impacted by this and how we can connect and learn about these things, because there are, from as simple as the memes that I'm seeing about quarantine and lockdown is not the same. Is not equal across all these areas. There are people who are going hungry. There are people who are homeless. There are people who have no safe space. There are people who they can. I do have to touch on this topic. There are community members that have been impacted by our colonial modality of believing that different ethnicities are considered race and racism, where our Black and brown relatives are fearing for their lives when they're wearing a protective cover over their face because they are seen as a community member that is to be looked down upon. There's so much racism to Chinese people. There's so much racism against Black and brown relatives who are just trying to be safe. If you look out there and you see some of these posts, these relatives are hurting. They either have to question putting themselves in dangerous spaces by covering their face to going to public markets because people think they're going to rob them because the assumptions around colorism is absurd. And the same, or protect yourself and protect your face and maintain social distancing. It's very heavy. And right now we need to be in community with love, with patience, at minimum tolerance, because we're all struggling. And I struggle daily, and I count my blessings, and I recognize that if I'm going to be a force to be reckoned with, I want to do good with the energy I have and the knowledge that I can share. And so from as simple as us becoming familiar with these other narratives, not just consuming the mainstream media about politics, but looking at the things that aren't always talked about. What about our elders? What about our culture keepers? What about our storytellers? How can we be in community? There are many times that there are community members who I witness as thirsty for culture and knowledge, but they already come at it like, I have these set of questions. Tell me about your spiritual this, or tell me about this particular practice that. And to me, coming with an empty cup, coming humble and just saying, can I help? Or I have these skills, or I have this opportunity. May I be of service? Maybe they don't need help, maybe they do. But instead of saying, hi, local native person, I need this from you, or I really feel inclined to ask these particular tidbits, I want to be in community together. And I am not responsible for my education, but I do seek guidance. I do seek the opportunity to interact. And so when I speak at different forums and in different spaces, I talk about decolonization, re-indigenization. I talk about allyship, and I talk about indigenous pedagogies and how we can strategize sustainable futures. But most of it is just grounding ourselves and just being present and well, the usual statement, honoring truth and history. So in this, I want to pose a few questions. From as simple as there are some of us who might pray or offer words before food is served. Some of us may say a prayer. Are we taking time to appreciate how that nourishment came to us? Are we thanking those lives lived and the gifts given? And those considerations around those living beings, how they're taken care of. When we harvest and collect medicine and herbs, are we thanking them? Because they are our relatives. There are times that I visit 3rd and 4th grade classrooms and I ask them, how many of you are omnivores? And I'm like, meat, berries, veggies. And how many of you are vegetarian or vegan? And I get them to raise a hand, and the statistics usually are about 10% vegetarian or vegan. And I say, do you realize that you have to take a life, or at least drastically impact a life, to sustain your own? And are we considering our impact? So there might be times that you might catch a recording or a conversation of me being very frustrated around organizations that happen to talk about medicinal and edible tours and tours around the Bay Area. And the teachers, when they don't talk about truth and history, when they don't talk about the ecological system that has been drastically impacted by colonization, when they can't acknowledge the land, nor if they cannot acknowledge how the indigenous peoples don't even have access to their cultural resources, their sacred sites, their lands, I kind of will raise a stink about it, because you're not including a core fundamental element to that. And so I am frustrated when people capitalize off of sharing that education without being accountable. We don't know what we don't know. However, some of the organizations that I have witnessed who do this purposely silence people of color's voices, purposefully silence indigenous voices, and I will vehemently oppose it. However, I am totally for us reconnecting to our kinship to nature, our stewardship practices, our learning modalities, and connecting with our relatives, these plant lives, these beings, these opportunities for us to get our fingers dirty with soil, these opportunities for us to bring in good medicine from the plants, the knowledge and the wisdom of these beings. So know that if you ever witness me in this angry mode, it's certain behaviors, and I recognize that they are behaviors. I don't believe that there are bad people. There are bad actions, and many of us can work on this, and we're all taking this journey, and we're all working on this slowly. I'm taking steps to decolonize, breaking apart what I've been taught, how I've been taught, where that knowledge and understanding comes from. Also, re-indigenization, bringing in those indigenous teachings and approaching it with accountability, humility, reciprocity, integrity, and intention. And I'm excited to witness so many beings that are coming into this space, coming into permaculture circles, coming into agroecology, coming into water stewardship, and taking the time to honor truth and history, as well as their own ancestry. Some of us may run into walls about where our ancestors come from. So if you run into walls to where your ancestors come from, where is it that you're standing on? And how are we showing up in community now? The current issues, the current peoples, and what are the struggles? Because we can all come together in a good way. So I'm definitely excited about this work. I forgot how much time we had. I think I'm close to my edge, right? I do want to voice. I'll ease it up in voicing that when we reconnect to these things that, well, my mother taught me that if I'm going to harvest medicine, if I don't have a pinch of tobacco to offer, I will sometimes offer hair or a prayer and let the plant know where it's going. And I'll even ask it, because ethical and sustainable harvesting methods are important. We don't want to take the first and the last, and we want to be sure that, well, we're coming in a good way. We're paying attention to where this knowledge and this medicine is coming from. And so I'll offer hair, and I'll offer a song sometimes to you know, the little Indian lettuce or the chickweed and these opportunities. And so there's a little hummingbird song that I want to offer as I go out. This is a hummingbird song that has the cadence and inspiration from my Rumsian relatives. Rumsian is Monterey Bay Territory, the first language. Their word is Humaya, and in our language, the Mutsun dialect, is Humunya. And oh, factoid quiz later. Recognize this sign? Well, the contemporary media, live long and prosper. Did you know that Star Trek has a language, the Vulcan Klingon language? Well, that language was developed and perfected by a man named Mark Okrand. Mark Okrand got his PhD in the Mutsun dialect. Now imagine a world where people who learn from indigenous teachings and knowledge and languages were actually accountable to where that knowledge came from. More people who know Klingon and know about that Vulcan language would actually say, wow, indigenous languages inspired this, because native languages hold that integral connection to, well, the solid sentence structure. English is a predatory language. Ugh. So Mutsun, PhD, helped Mark Okrand tap into his creative energies, his own intellectual property rights, to synthesize an alien language where thousands of people talk with it. However, there are very few indigenous relatives who can speak in our language. I'm relearning the language. I now understand why I think the way I do, and it comes with language revitalization. So this is a little hummingbird song, and it's talking about the pollinators. It's talking about our relatives. Hummingbird is part of our creation story, the first people who brought life to humanity. Hummingbird, coyote, and eagle brought life to us humans. So to honor hummingbird, I'm offering a hummingbird song. Humunya, 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 weha, weha. Humunya, 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 weha, weha, ho. Humunya, 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 weha, weha. Humunya, 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 weha, weha, ho. Humunya, 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 weha, weha. Humunya, 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 weha, weha, ho. Humunya, 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 weha, weha. Humunya, 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 weha, weha, ho. Oh, 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 oh. No son in breath, so it is in spirit. I thank you for your time, your energy, your effort. I'm appreciative of those who have joined this circle. And thank you for whoever is also witnessing this recording in the future. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Kanyon. Your share was so beautiful and powerful. Thank you for the songs and for your heart and all that you stand for. Thank you so much. And hello to everyone who just joined us. Just for your information, this is being recorded and we'll be able to share it later, and we're doing it every Friday. So that was Kanyon sharing about Indigenous Insights and decolonization and different things. And we can do some question and answers later about it. I'm gonna have Bloom go ahead and take over. Oh wait, did he just leave? Kanyon, can you share another song while Bloom reconnects?
You caught me as I'm walking around the house. Let's see here. Well, yeah, there's a good one that is a beautiful one that is me in my efforts in relearning language, and in my relearning the Mutsun dialect. I have witnessed in the language, in the Mutsun dictionary, when I started relearning language, there is a few words that I brought into a song. And so I'm just giving that context that it's still learning its rhythm. So it's still in its lovely newborn stage, breathing life into it. And this is a coyote song. So, Kan wasma hetse wakshishe, Kan wasma hetse wakshishe, Wakaniskuan, Ara kan waskuan, Wakaniskuan, Ara kan waskuan. Sawe, 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 sawe. Kan wasma hetse wakshishe, Kan wasma hetse wakshishe, Wakaniskuan, Ara kan waskuan, Wakaniskuan, Ara kan waskuan. Sawe, 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 sawe. Oh, 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 oh. And that one is, I see it, the coyote. He sees me and I see him, or he says to me and I say to him, sing, 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 sing. And so it was a way for me to try and become more familiar with my coyote nature and my coyote energies, and also song sharing. There are many times that traditional songs, they have a reason and a purpose. And as much as we want to reconnect to culture and language, if we haven't been gifted those songs from the origin or the carriers of this knowledge, it's not always the healthiest to just, like, let's say, hear a recording and repeat it, because we're not totally sure what the teachings are around it, given that sometimes some songs are meant to be sung by certain community members or at certain times. And many of our traditional songs, I have not been gifted the right to sing them. I'm allowed to sing some songs, however, independently as my own being like this, or especially if I'm going to be on stage and they are offering funding, it feels appropriative. It feels like cultural appropriation, given that I'm getting paid to sing and it's not my song to profit off of. So I always try and remind people that when we share songs, that we acknowledge its source. It's from it's a more storytelling-esque element, similar to citing your sources and permissions granted. There are elders of communities. One of my relatives had to ask every single time to sing a song, because even though she was given permission to sing at one rally, and it was for missing and murdered Indigenous women and raising awareness, she had to go back to her community, ask permission again to sing it at another location. And each time is important, because it's not this assumption, oh, I was given permissions granted, I'm allowed to go and do this thing. it's intentional, it's integral. And so I've been working with language revitalization so I could be respectful with how I go about things. And it's really hard because I'm begging for song. Well, I'm not begging. I have to do a lot more work to get the opportunity to sing songs that carry good energy and good medicines. And I was like, I want to sing a song. I just want to make a song because I can. There's a little extra work involved. So
thank you so much for sharing these songs, and we really look forward to hearing more as these series develop and as you earn more of these songs to share with us. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Bloom now to share about where we're at and what we can do at home in terms of permaculture and different veggies and foods that we can grow no matter what kind of situation we're in. Bloom, I invite you to come ahead and jump on and dazzle us, brother.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks, Kanyon. I really learned a lot from what you shared, and I actually took notes, so I can send that to you if you want. But yeah, it's really good to just bring all of this up, bring it into conversation, and get thinking about it, because like you said, people don't know what they don't know, but there's ways that we can learn and ways that we can reconnect. And also, we all have this ancestry of people that were practicing ways that were more connected to the earth and community, and having different practices that supported that within our lives. So it is something that's calling us back home, and in that path, in that process, it's important to be respectful and acknowledging the people of the land that we're on, and the ways that have been going on for many generations. So yeah, that's where the permaculture comes in, and it's this really beautiful weaving, and it's really amazing to know that you, Kanyon, did the permaculture design course with Starhawk, the Earth Activist training, which was the same course I did. And for those of you who are just kind of know what permaculture is, or don't know what permaculture is, or have a slight idea, the very basic way to describe it is the word permaculture stands for permanent culture, but it also stands for permanent agriculture. And the word permanent, I mean, you could say from a Buddhist perspective that nothing's permanent, everything changes, especially in 2020. That's becoming really relevant. But the word permanent is referring to like creating sustainable systems, but even beyond sustainable, creating regenerative systems, creating systems where you can plant something and it makes the soil healthier and it gives you seeds for planting more crops. And that relates to the indigenous saying of 7 generations, of just caring for the future generations. And so permaculture is based on 3 ethics, which are care for the earth, care for the people, and fair share. So anything to be considered permaculture has to be something that cares for the earth, that cares for the people. And the third one, fair share, has also been described by other people as care for the future. Actually, that's what Charles Williams, who teaches alongside Starhawk, likes to call it instead of fair share, is care for the future, because that encompasses a lot more. And it's also been described as return the surplus. So it has to do with when we are growing and generating all this abundance, how can we give back? How can we return the surplus, both to people, to the earth? And so everything in permaculture has these 2 layers of it. It has the people side of it, and it has the food side of it. So a lot of people also think of permaculture as just food related, but it also has to do with building community. And Starhawk actually says that growing food is the easy part and getting along with other people is the hard part. So she actually teaches a whole social permaculture course on that with Pandora Thomas, who is an amazing permaculture activist as well. And so just a really brief history of permaculture. The idea of permaculture came through a man named Bill Mollison, who he recently passed a few years ago, and he was from Tasmania. So I think of him as like the Tasmanian angel instead of the Tasmanian devil. He comes from Tasmania, which is like a beautiful, lush island just south of Australia. I heard from a friend who's been there that there's actually like phosphorescent blue glowing mushrooms and lichen and moss and like kind of avatar type of place. And I actually recently met Bill Mollison's son at the Bioneers conference last summer, which Bioneers is actually where, I'm pretty sure, where I met Kanyon many years ago, because Bioneers is this amazing conference that brings in like the cutting edge of renewable technologies and innovation and ideas, and they have a whole Indigenous wisdom area and a youth area, and biomimicry is a big foundation of it, and they have inspirational speakers and performers. And so yeah, so Bill Mollison's son was there, and I got to meet him, and he's been doing all this amazing work in Mexico and other parts of the world, bringing permaculture and social justice to places where it's needed. And so back to where permaculture came from, Bill Mollison had a student named, for some reason it's blanking on me right now, but Bill Mollison and his student, they traveled around together, they were studying permaculture together, and just pulling upon all of the different things they had learned from, and Bill Mollison acknowledges this in the Permaculture Designer's Manual, everything they've learned from visiting Indigenous communities, from visiting rainforest ecosystems, from working with Fukuoka in Japan, from working with people around the world and learning from ecosystems around the world, this idea of permaculture formed. And in the Permaculture Designer's Manual, it acknowledges the Indigenous people, it acknowledges the natural systems of the earth. It even talks about more esoteric things like toroidal energy fields and spiral dynamics, and this whole Australian Aboriginal creation story of the rainbow serpent, which is this like rainbow serpent that moves throughout the planet, creating mountains and waterways and making the terraforming of the earth for lots of plants and life to grow and thrive. So permaculture actually is very spiritual and very Indigenous connected. Yeah, David Holmgren. So it's Bill Mollison and David Holmgren founded the idea of permaculture. But then Indigenous people have been farming in biodiverse ways and growing food in biodiverse ways for a very long time, for beyond what we even know. And so yeah, that's a just brief overview of permaculture, and it also involves a lot of different principles such as observe and interact, observing our surroundings and just really tuning into what can we grow here before we just go in and start planting. Having a permaculture mindset means listening, tuning in, observing. And so that's what we're going to get into today, is what we can do in the next half hour or so, or 20 minutes, what we can do from home. So a lot of us are at home. We're all at home right now. We're quarantined. We can't really go anywhere. We might be worried about the supply chain of food. And whether or not we are, it's still important to just start getting into the mindset of how can we start growing food for ourselves, for our families, for our communities, and remediating the ecosystems and the soil. So that's an amazing thing that permaculture does, which non-organic monoculture doesn't do, is that with permaculture and with organic farming and gardening, when you plant things, it regenerates the soil and it gives back to the soil rather than sucking and depleting the soil. And so permaculture is really all about like different plants with their different special features and medicines working together and really supporting each other like an interwoven symbiotic community. And so with permaculture, there is something called polyculture planting, where you plant plants that like to grow together and they all support each other. So a really basic example, which is actually an Indigenous farming skill, is called the Three Sisters. So it's the beans, the corn, and the squash. So the corn grows up and creates shade, and the beans grow up the corn, and the squash creates the ground cover, and it creates, just with these three plants, this amazing symbiotic ecosystem. And so a good way to just learn about what plants grow together is either talk to a local farmer that does permaculture farming, or online there's all sorts of companion planting guides that say what likes to grow with what. So I'm going to focus now on what you can do from home, what you can do from where you are. So you might have space in your front yard, in your side yard, in your backyard, or you have a roof maybe that's flat and sturdy enough to put a planter box on top. Or if you don't have any of that, then you might have a windowsill, or you might have space inside your house that gets sunlight. So basically, whatever situation you're in, there's a way to grow food, and there's a lot you can do with just taking the food that you already have that you're cooking with and taking the ends of it, putting it into water. And there's different techniques for different plants and different foods, but you can save seeds, especially, I mean, if you get food from an organic farmer's market and you want to regrow that food, you can really easily regrow the carrots, the tomatoes, the bok choy, and there's just a lot of ways that you can regrow the food that you're already eating. But also, if you have access to a local nursery that grows starts or seeds, then you can also germinate your own seeds. And there's actually a couple ways that you can speed up the process of germinating the seeds. Some tricks that are really helpful. One is just soaking the seeds in warm water for like an hour or so, and then when you plant them, they're already starting to sprout and they'll start germinating faster. Another is just put it next to your fireplace if you have a fireplace, or you can even just make like a mini greenhouse for them and just put them all together. And if you have a compost pile that's active, actually you can put the starts or the little seed trays in the compost pile, cover it with a tarp, and it will create like a little greenhouse effect, and it will speed up the process of germinating. And because it's springtime, and you all might be calling in from many different places, but I know a lot of people here are calling in from California, and it really depends on the ecosystem you're in. But things that are good to grow right now in the spring in California that grow really fast and grow really efficiently are tomatoes, peppers, squash, cucumbers, carrots, beans, lettuce, sweet corn. You can grow watermelon even, and radishes, snow peas, lettuce, kale. Kale is really good because it grows fast, and it also will grow well if it's cold or if it's warm. And yeah, there's a lot you can grow even in a small space. And there's also lots of really cool tricks for just like, if you only have space inside your house and it gets some sunlight through the window, you can make planter boxes and hang them from the ceiling, or you can even just take ropes and tie them in certain ways so you have multiple potted plants hanging from each other, and you can have herbs growing on your windowsill. So yeah, I'm just gonna check some of these other things I wanted to share. I was doing some research of just some fun like at-home garden hacks that you can do, just things that will help you grow food from home a lot faster. And if you happen to have an aloe vera plant and you want to grow more of them, you can take a little cutting of the aloe vera, and then you can put it in a banana, and then the roots will start growing into the banana as the banana decomposes. And then you plant all of that into a pot with soil, and then the roots will grow through the banana with extra potassium and give it a lot of extra nutrients and make it grow a lot faster. And you can also plant seeds in a tea bag. So if you're drinking some tea and you have a tea bag that you're just going to compost, you can put a seed inside of it and it will start sprouting and grow a lot faster. You can also just take seeds, and you can take peanuts, so you can take like a date or different seeds that sprout well, and you can put them in warm water for an hour and then put them in a paper towel, and they'll just start sprouting after a couple days, and then you can plant them and they'll already have sprouted. And so I have a bunch of links to things like that I'll be sharing at the end of this talk. And another thing to keep in mind is that not everyone's yard is going to already have good organic soil. There might be a lot of chemicals or fertilizers in the yard, especially if it's a place you're renting or that you moved into that's a little bit more industrial or maybe has had chemicals sprayed on it. So there is ways that you can remediate the soil. So if you're wanting to get gardening now, you might want to just start out with getting some organic soil from a local gardening shop. If you're somewhere near like grow places and there's a grow shop, they actually have really good soil that you can start with. And getting like a felt pot or like one of those smart pots, or if you have just a regular pot, just make sure that it drains at the bottom so it doesn't get waterlogged. And then you can just fill it up with good soil that you buy or that you get from a friend or from a local farm, and you can start your garden that way. But over time, if you want to remediate soil, there's a bunch of plants that will actually start healing the soil. So healthy soil has a good balance of NPK, which is nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And you can get little soil testing kits that are really easy to use, where you just stick it in the soil. It will show you the pH level of the soil, tell you how healthy it is. And then there's certain plants that can help take out different toxins, even heavy metals, all sorts of things. And so that's called phytoremediation. I'll be posting a link to what kind of plants are really good for phytoremediation. Sunflowers, for example, are really good at just pulling out toxins. If there's a lot of toxins in the soil, it might actually pull out so many toxins that the sunflower itself has to be disposed of as toxic waste. But that's how good the sunflower is at like pulling all the toxins out. And another really good way to get toxins out of the soil is mycoremediation. So working with mushrooms, and that's become such a big thing now for a really good reason, especially with Paul Stamets and with his film Fantastic Fungi, and with all the people doing amazing work with mushrooms, because mushrooms really are key to helping to restore the soil, pull out toxins, clean up oil spills, clean up toxins even just in your yard, things like that. And it's really inspiring to see what you can do just at your own home. Like on the permaculture tour that I co-created with Anahata, who's online here now, back in 2015, we went to a friend's house in Portland, and he just had a grass lawn, which not a lot of people really think of it like this, but a grass lawn is actually a monoculture crop because it's just the same plant over and over again. So we took out all the top of the grass lawn. We got a bunch of wood chips donated because we were able to contact an arborist that happened to have a bunch of extra wood chips that came and just dumped it off for us. We had a bunch of wood chips donated, and we had a bunch of compost that was also donated. And if you're in a place like Portland or any city that has any sort of like permaculture sustainability programs, or just people doing that kind of work, it's pretty easy to resource extra material that people aren't using. And we just brought it all together, all of our resources and the energy of our team. And we made a little map, a design of like a mandala garden. And we turned the whole front yard. We dug up all the grass, filled it with good soil, healthy soil, and wood chips. And then we created all these little polyculture guilds of healthy, happy plants, especially a lot of pollinator plants that attracted bees and hummingbirds and butterflies, and then also food to eat. And we created a really beautiful garden in that front yard. And also a note on just urban gardening. There's so much you can do in a small space. I have a friend in my hometown in San Luis Obispo named Daniel, and he just like, I remember going to his house once, and he took me on a walk in his backyard, which was very small. And it was just like a little path with a little wooden deck. And he just started telling me all these visions of all these things he wanted to plant, including all these tropical fruits that he knew weren't going to fruit, but he wanted to plant them anyways, just because he was excited about growing things, and he wanted to put in a beehive, and he wanted to like fill the sides of the paths with herbs. And he had this amazing vision. And I talked with him about just different things he could do in different places. And then the next time I came to visit, there was all these things growing and a mulch path. And so mulch is like wood chips or something you put on the top layer to just soak in the water. And he had cover crops going, and he was attempting to grow bananas and guavas and dragon fruit and all these things that you would see in Hawaii or Costa Rica. But we were in the Mediterranean climate in San Luis Obispo, and everything was actually growing really well. It might not fruit, but it was adding a lot to the soil, adding a lot to the environment. And it's a small space, but it felt like a beautiful like rainforest basically in his backyard. And I've been to a lot of places like that, just urban spaces that have been transformed into beautiful permaculture paradises. And the next level with that, which I'm really inspired by, is what the Village Building Convergence does in Portland with through the Regenerative Design Institute and the City Repair Project. And they essentially transform the urban grid of urban cities into an eco-village model. So the best example of it that I've seen is at the Planet Repair Institute in Portland, where the people that founded the Village Building Convergence live. And what they did over some time was they got to know all their neighbors, even the neighbors that they thought weren't going to like them. But then it turned out that those neighbors were just waiting for someone to come get to know them because they were lonely. And then once they made that connection, they were able to turn this whole block into essentially a full eco-village, where all of the fences between the houses got taken down. These beautiful little paths connect all the houses. This empty lawn turned into the community compost pile for everyone's compost for building healthy soil. And then there was an area for community potlucks, murals in the street that people painted, which actually slowed down traffic, so that, because there were a lot of kids in the neighborhood, so they were trying to figure out a way to slow down traffic so the kids could play more freely and safely. And so these beautiful murals all in the streets slowed down traffic because everyone was checking them out and checking out all the plants around them. And they had little tea houses and a little cob bench and a free library and a poetry stand. And eventually the whole neighborhood just became a full-on eco-village, even though originally it was this grid city structure. It just turned into an eco-village. And I've seen things like that pop up in lots of places. And then another question that comes up when it comes to that kind of thing is the policy. And so both this community in Portland, as well as the eco-village in Vancouver Island, where Kanyon and I both did and Anahata all did our permaculture design course, they were all faced with zoning laws of like things that they weren't allowed to build, amounts of houses, amount of people that could live in one place. And both of these examples have a story where the people went in, got to know their politicians, the city council people, the governor, and proposed what they wanted to do and what they wanted to build. In the situation of the permaculture, the village building convergence in Portland, they actually just kind of like did it renegade style first. And then in their situation, they actually kind of like brought the people together to kick the mayor at the time out of office, bring in one of their friends as the mayor, and that kind of made it a lot easier. But in the one in Canada, this amazing woman, Brandy Gallagher, who runs the Eco Village, she just went in, got to know the guy that was in charge that everyone said was going to tell her no, and she brought him to the Eco Village, and he had a really heart-opening experience and gave them the rights to actually be a legal Eco Village, which they didn't have a policy for, so they actually got to create what the policy looked like to be an Eco Village, have more people live on the land. And so there's just a lot of possibilities of what you can do, but just scaling it back to where we are now, it really, there's so much you can do. You can save your seeds, you can regrow the stalks of your food, you can get seeds from friends or get starts from friends. And yeah, just making sure you're saving your compost and building healthy soil with it is a big thing. And then if you do start getting a garden going outside, you also want to remember to have cover crops. You want to think of it like you're putting a roof on the bed of soil, because if it's just exposed soil, then anything can come in and grow on it. And so you want to protect the plants, but also the cover crops will give you more nutrients for your plants. So you want to find out what kind of cover crop is best for the plants you're growing or the area you're in. But there's a lot of different things like vetch, or there's perennial peanuts, and you're basically, the more green you have on the ground, the better. And then in your compost pile, you want to have a good combination of carbon and nitrogen. And so that's like brown and green. So the nitrogen comes from your food scraps. It comes from, if you have animals like ducks or anything, like it comes from the manure, it comes from lawn clippings, green leaves. And then the carbon comes from branches, stems, wood chips, sawdust, things like that. And you basically want to have like 1/3 green to 2/3 brown. And it's going to be impossible to like fully know how much of what's going on, but just like having that in mind, that you want more of the brown, more of the carbon than the nitrogen. So you want to just like fill up your compost with more leaves, and just over time, and then turn it. And if you're keeping care of your compost, and it could just be a pile outside that you put a tarp over to keep the warmth inside of it, or it could be a compost bin, or it could be a worm bin. There's a lot of ways to do it. But if you're taking care of it and turning it every once in a while, it's actually going to get so alive with microorganisms that when you go and lift some of it up and check in on it, it's going to be like as hot as a sauna, and it's going to be just teeming with life. And that's how you know that it's like ready for you to plant plants and to grow your garden. So yeah, just start with what you have and then build up to making healthy soil, remediating the soil. And so that's the permaculture aspect of what you can do for planting your external garden. And also in permaculture, there's this concept of zones. So there's zone 0, which is yourself, zone 0, which is your immediate like indoor space, zone 1, which is your everything outside, which is maybe where your like herb garden is, the things that you're going to check on every day, and it goes on like that. So we can focus on our external garden, but we can also come back to zone 0, which is ourselves, and think about what are we doing to tend to the garden inside of ourselves, inside of our hearts, inside of our souls, inside of our being. And while we're on this global pause, we have so much time to integrate all of our life's experience, everything that we've experienced up to this point, everything we've learned, and we can also start envisioning where we want to go from here, what we want to do, if we want to start joining in community after we're able to gather again, if we want to start building and growing on the land, either transforming the place we're already in, or maybe even going off grid or going out into the country with a community of amazing people and building an eco village. So there's a lot of possibilities. So I just invite us all to tune into what seeds we're planting inside of ourselves right now for our internal garden. And yeah, with that, for a lot more of the technical things, I'll be posting it with a bunch of links so you can check that out. I have a whole resource list I made for all of you. But on the note of integration and planting the internal seeds and tending to our internal garden, I'm going to hand it over to Sky, who's going to be diving deeper into that. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Bloom. That's such useful, resourceful information for all of us to be able to learn how we can take advantage of this time that we have at home and truly gain abundance and find more ways that we can just come into center and find balance through all of this uncertainty that we're facing. So thank you. On a special note real quick, I am realizing in the list, I'm seeing Mama Breeze, and that happens to be the mother of my child. I'm wondering if you're there with Manji. Is Manji there with you, Breezy? If you're there and able, go ahead and unmute yourself. Hi, Papa. Hey, buddy. Excuse me, everyone. I just wanted to say hello to Manji real quick. Hi, Papas.
Hey, Manji.
How are you, buddy? I can't see you. Where are you? Oh, where is he? Where's this monkey man? Hi, dude. Look at that crazy hair. Oh, you got your tractors, buddy? Oh, yay.
No, Layla's.
What'd you say?
It's Layla's tractor.
Oh, it's Layla's tractor? Oh, that's good. I'm glad you're here with us, buddy. I want to share with the group some things, okay? And then I'd love to talk to you afterward, all right, buddy? I love you, buddy. I'll see you soon.
But I want to show you something else.
You what?
Something else.
So what's something else?
I want to show you something else.
Oh, okay. I love you, buddy. Can you show me afterward, all right, Papa? Thank you, everyone, for that brief intermission. So, yeah, here we are. And hello, family. I really appreciate you all being here and taking this time. I'd like to start with one of my favorite quotes by Joseph Campbell, and it goes, "The cave that you fear to enter holds the treasures that you seek." And here we are, in this cave, in the chalices. And this may be the most important time in human history. So much is happening. And I keep asking myself, how am I going to integrate this global process that we find ourselves in? You know, and how are we taking care of ourselves? How are we taking care of others in this time? And what does it take to support ourselves and others? And what can we do here from home? Through so many different facets of life, we have so many things that shape our experiences. And with physical distancing, you know, it's like, what are these things? And how can we pay more attention and set intentions for how this is all shaping our experience? Some examples of how life shapes our experiences, you know, come from nourishing experiences like bonding and natural experiences of satiation, connective experiences, belongingness and meaning within a group. We get learning experiences from gaining information, knowledge, skills, and abilities. There's conditioning experiences that model our behavior, adhering to trends and adopting ideologies. Then there's even traumatic experiences, you know, adverse experiences that leave damaging marks and cause us trauma. Painful experiences, you know, which could be any kind of pain or loss of self or other. It could be a pet, it could be a loss of functionality, status or reputation. It could be a loss of power, opportunity, heartbreak, rejection, even humiliation. Then there's rewarding experiences, right? There's blessings, there's the fruitions, there's recognition and opportunity. We have triumphal experiences, which, you know, like wins and achievements, how we're conquering and seizing the day and how we're overcoming all of our challenges. There's flow experiences, right? That are meditative, that are high skill activities that put us in the zone. Then it gets even deeper to like rites of passage that shape all of our experiences, from simple things like our birthdays to commencements, graduations, ceremonies, marriage, right? Then there's turning points, which for me, I find the most value in the turning points, which is like the start or the end of a chapter, or a change in relationships or location, work, etc. Through each conversion point, we open another chapter in life. And some come with new problems and new questions. And it can take so much bravery to even talk about the problems of the world these days. For talking about it isn't enough anymore. Our voices are so drowned out by media and traditional narrative that we have to be outraged to even get attention. And this can be extremely discouraging. You know, for wherever we go, there we are, feeling out of control and at the mercy of those in power. So through this series, I invite us all to truly take self-responsibility on what we can do, which is to take our power back and remember to listen to our inner knowing, to move beyond the fear and anxiety that is crippling so many who feel powerless. And, you know, it's in this process that we have to be more intelligent than our body, because the body, in most cases, is living in the past, as long as we're not in integrity with the mother being Mother Earth and our connection to her. So how are we not in integrity with the mother? And, you know, I ask myself this quite often, and it's the answer I come to is by not being present with my breath and with what is. Because when we're in our trauma, we're living in the past, just like our body is. So we must be more intelligent than our bodies. We have to rewrite the patterns and build a container for us to land in as we emerge out of the chalices that we're all in through this collective dark night of the soul. And, you know, emerging through this chalices and having a landing pad to where we can truly assess all that we faced and leaned into becomes our hero's journey. And how do we do this? You know, we do this by arriving, by understanding and accepting what we're experiencing and why. It takes so much courage to arrive into the reality which we're dealing with in these times right now. But by being rigorously honest with ourselves, allows us to connect to the underlying needs that are not being met or being addressed, and therefore that gives us power. So what is the reality that we're having to face? How can we be more rigorously honest with ourselves so that we can connect to our own needs that aren't being met? And what are the needs that aren't being met? Are they in the realms of thought, emotions, and heart nature? What are the needs we have to meet within ourselves? It's unique for each person. I can't tell you what it is. It's up to all of you to really discover what your truth is. You know, it's in establishing the foundation of health, happiness, wholeness, and fulfillment will give us the baseline to assess where we are really at within ourselves. So what are the tenets of a life well lived? How can we identify and measure self-improvements, our quality of life, and level of functionality, maturation, and development when faced with so much uncertainty? What is the baseline that we are operating from? In Maslow's hierarchy, it points out our human needs for survival and safety, connection and belonging, personal strength and wellness, and the need to become one's best self. Going even further along, Tony Robbins, he says there are 6 human needs. 1 is certainty and stability. 2 is variety and novelty. 3 is significance and achievement and recognition from others. 4 is connection, which I think is by far the very most important one. It's connection and building relationship, right relationship within this world and to ourselves. The 5th is growth, and he says that the 6th is contribution. How are we contributing to humanity? You know, what are we giving back? As Bloom mentioned earlier, how are we giving back? To what extent are we giving back? So I ask, you know, what actions can we take to fulfill these baseline needs while in quarantine? Is this a time for personal transformational work and shifting where we lay our focus and how we perceive free will, how we perceive destiny? For me, the answer is most certainly yes. And it has been a huge discovery process for me to unfold so I can see how I can best show up for myself and my loved ones. In this time, I have found so much value in questioning what I can expect on this journey through quarantine and the global pandemic. My personal empowerment has laid in taking inventory of what kinds of hardships, challenges, and pain that I may go through as each wave comes and goes. And in doing this, I feel more equipped and prepared for whatever is coming. It gives me a sense of safety and wellness on all levels. Whereas before, I never really asked myself what wellness is. And I never really asked myself, how do I feel safe? These are all very seemingly simple questions that we overlook all the time because we're so caught up in the narrative and and the whole world telling us what to think and what to feel. You know, so what is wellness, right? When will you be well? And who isn't well? And how do you know that you're not well? Will it be a little bit more money? Will that get you well? Is it getting food on the table? When are you well enough? Is it external circumstances that will make you feel a sense of wellness and wholeness? Or is it an internal experience that we build up to? We all know the answer within us. And when we get out of the way, out of our own way, and the way of our body's intelligence, we get that answer. And all of this, we are so impacted by what we have to face in order to live in the present moment. It is challenging. And through life, there are inevitable challenges and hardships that we must all face. And so I ask, what are some of these? You know, and there's predictable ones and then ones that aren't so obvious. And some predictable challenges that I've had to face and that I've realized, you know, is of course, like having to make difficult decisions, especially now. Like a lot of people are running out of money and we have to decide, like, how are we going to pay rent next month? How are we going to get food on this table? How are we going to have gas money to go to the grocery store to provide for ourselves? You know, other challenges are having regrets over the past. I don't know about all of you, but like this time has really had me investigate like what has been left incomplete. You know, what do I need to tend to in my internal garden? What relationships need amending? And how can I show up to that? And then there's other things like feeling anxious about the future. That's a big one right now because it's very uncertain. I mean, it's kind of always been a little uncertain, you know, but like, especially now. And, you know, a lot of us are feeling really overwhelmed in this moment, dealing with loss and heartache, feelings of inadequacy, you know, other difficulties and challenges like struggles with our livelihood and solving our issues. And then we kind of get into like the less known and less acknowledged challenges and hardships that we have to face, like the severity of our pain and suffering, you know, like breakups and divorce and all of the rise of domestic abuse in all the households right now. It's huge. It is huge. A lot of us feel really comfy in our home, right? And there's other people who never wanted to go back home because it's so abusive. And it has traumatized these people so deeply that it is like a nightmare for them to think about going back home. A lot of us have lost jobs or a house, money, you know. Other things that we got to face is like suicide and deaths of loved ones, especially the elderly, you know, wisdom keepers and elders in our society as well. You know, it's this virus is touching all of us and impacting our lives in ways that we could never predict. Other things we have to deal with are like accidents, injuries, loss of mobility or functioning. And we have to face this disease, right? We have to figure out how to keep ourselves healthy and what we can do to build our immunity, to stay safe, to even think about like how are we going to approach normalcy again? What will normalcy be again? Are we not going to handshake and hug? I know I am. I got to have hugs in my life. I got to, you know, but like a lot of people are talking about like, yeah, I'm not, you know, I'll just do the wave. It's just like, that's not how I want to live. You know, and then there's so many victims of crime and abuse with everyone in such a panic. You know, we're dealing with natural disasters, economic shifts, and the acts of cosmic law, or others call it divine order. And these are kind of the more subtle things that a lot of us don't really think about very often. You know, and in knowing all this, we're able to then ask ourselves powerful questions with what internal work we need to do to attain homeostasis. We all have to weave through so much right now, questioning what is normal and what's abnormal for us as individuals, in our family, and in our culture. And it's so important that we have these discussions so that we don't make judgments about what's normal for some and abnormal for others. We already have so much separating us and distracting us from what truly, we already have so much separating us from truly coming together in solidarity around important issues, whether we realize it or not. You know, a lot of us feel really unsafe. And so what does that look like for you? What does it feel like when you aren't safe? You know, I invite you to name or write down some of the times when you felt like you weren't safe. And we can talk about it next week, because I think that would be a really big topic on, you know, on how we're not feeling safe, just to be acknowledged in that space and what we can do to feel more safe. It's important we're clear on these kinds of things, as it creates the reality of our own experience and it allows us to see what is real for us. For there is so much information and propaganda out there, like I said earlier, telling us who we should be, how we should think, and what we should feel. And I find it all so clouded and distracting from my own voice and my own internal navigation system. And so how do we find our own voice in these times again? How can we navigate to our own inner truth and find out who we are, how we want to show up, and what we want to take with us from this moment? How can we integrate this experience? What is integration? A lot of people, they say this word, and you know, there's a lot of ways to define it. A really simple way is integration is to become one with. Integration is to bring all the fragmented pieces into oneness. So I ask you guys, what does that look like for you on an individual soul level? Through this series, we'll be diving deep into these questions and discovering practical and effective ways that we can orient ourselves back to center and find balance through all the waves that are yet to come. So with that being said, I want to thank you all for being here with us. And I'd like to open the floor now for Bloom, Kanyon, and I to kind of weave it all together and for you guys to join in the discussion as well. And then we can further develop into questions and comments of this week's talk. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Sky Matios, and I hope that you guys are all enjoying this talk.
Great. Thanks so much, Sky. That was super informative and really good to just integrate and learn about integration and ways we can integrate. And so, yeah, if anyone has questions they want to ask or topics they want us to bring up or go deeper into, you can either type it or unmute yourself and just ask on here.
Grace had a question earlier, and the question was, she said, "Amazing, Kanyon. I'm very grateful for all that you do. Can you also give a brief explanation on what colonization is and what post-colonial settler mentality is? Like, give examples."
Well, let's see here. Well, I'm going to turn the light on here to help you see me. Hi! So I posted a Facebook link. I know not everybody has Facebook, but it's a link to the store, one of my stories for Kanyon Consulting, and I made a interesting little PDF. It was part of a PowerPoint, and so Western settler colonial mentality is negligent of the sacred. It is of a capitalistic, materialistic, post-industrial modality that is outsiders coming in. When you think about colonization, a lot of stories around colonization is outsiders coming into a territory. So modern day colonization is, well, think about it, gentrification. But I mean, for other nations and other territories, colonization has people coming from outside coming in saying they know what's best. So, like, did you know here in California, the Spaniards suffered from scurvy because they didn't know that our whole entire environment is a rich, diverse, ecological system that sustained indigenous peoples for thousands of years. However, they didn't come humbly and accountably to ask, how do you indigenous peoples identify and what are the ways to be in the land? They just came, they presumed they were right, they did not appreciate the beings in the community who stewarded the land since time immemorial and proclaimed that their ways are the only way. So decolonization, there are resources, many organizations are, it is a more current term because like it's breaking apart what that colonial construct is, but it still is breaking apart. So when I say when we're doing work to decolonize, it also means to bring in and create. So we need to be co-conspirators of our futures, and that is breaking away from the patterns and cultures of some traditions that have been very not so healthy to our living systems, and it's ongoing work. I'm still taking steps, and so I'm not a master of this. From as simple as looking at a couple of books, Me and White Supremacy and White Fragility, that actually is like core fundamental like decolonization work, because even myself, I have European ancestry and I feel the pain in my veins of people fighting people, and then what rules and methodologies came into play in founding this Americentric, which is fundamentally based on the Eurocentric colonial construct of what being in civilization is. And while our education system is negligent of the sacred, it does not include any perspectives of indigenous teachings, like from as simple as, did you know that our Constitution is based on the Iroquois Confederation? And that being said, the founding fathers only cherry-picked the convenient parts, i.e. the patriarchal parts, but many indigenous cultures are matriarchal and of matrilineal lines, where the women, aunties, grandmas were the decision makers. So our concept of democracy did have people deciding, standing for other people to be as a representative. However, it was aunties and grandmas who said, you can continue holding that seat, or we say no, because you're not doing your job. But the founding fathers conveniently cherry-picked convenient parts, and that's what a lot of our Americentric mentality plays in on, is like cherry pick a little this and a little that, little this, little that, what's convenient, and turn it into something new. So it's a process. So from as simple as Google, but dominantly reaching out to our communities. So if you ever hear the words or the acronyms QTPOC or BIPOC, BIPOC, this is Black, Indigenous, people of color, or queer, two-spirit, people of color. these communities have been doing a lot of work around this for many generations. And it's barely now that people are taking time to listen and sit intentionally. And we're all taking steps to decolonize. When we reconnect to the earth, we're breaking away from what modern day civilization proclaims as what is the average or the norm, and the things that we do today. It's just business as usual. It's just the way things are. It's the way the economy is driven. You know, that kind of energy. So just starting our journey. So I will have links on my website, canyonconsulting.com. Maybe this recording will be there at some point in time. Updates, I'm behind. And I'm looking forward to witnessing Sky and Bloom's amazing work and references and recommendations. And so ideally, we are going to share this work and encourage other beings to join these conversations, to start engaging in intentional community building and growing and just being there for each other. Like, not all of us are healers or workers. Not all of us are shadow workers. Not all of us have a green thumb. However, we all are in community together, and we all have strengths. We all have abilities, and we can celebrate each other. We can celebrate our diversity, and we can challenge each other. We can appreciate each other and what we can learn from each other. So I'm glad to be a part of this. Was there another part to that?
No, you answered that very fully. Thank you. Is there, if you could reference or provide a link for where we could find those original constitutional rights, right? Is what you're saying?
Well, technically, all you have to do is Google Iroquois Confederation and then Constitution, and there's a few of those. I will try and look it up to find out which ones were referred to me, because of course, yes, I'm a Native person, and there are professors and Indigenous relatives who show me some reasonable sites that I can find that could be vetted, but I have yet to have that bookmarked.
For sure. For sure. Thank you so much. That I didn't know that. That's fascinating to me. You know,
Right.
I've always kind of felt like our constitutional rights are, you know, good for us, I guess, you know, in our society, but maybe not good for everyone. And it's interesting to hear how they were cherry picked and whatnot. And I'd love to read about what the rest are.
Wow, Indigenous peoples had civil governance? Oh my God, those primitive savages actually knew how to be in community together? Wow, I never would have thought, because like all schools just taught me like they didn't have technology and they were just like dirty and they scalped everybody. Did you know
Yeah.
that it's actually it was a non-Indigenous crime against Indigenous peoples for the scalping? How do you prove you got yourself a native? California in 1850s, 1852, 1853, $1.4 million for the eradication of the California natives. $5 a head, 50 cents a scalp, to prove you got yourself a native, to free up the land for homesteaders and for the gold rush. Kind of messed up, right?
It's all so twisted, and you know, and that's why I really value this journey that we're all taking together week by week, so we can kind of demystify all these kind of things and remove stigma and taboo and get into the truth of who we are, how we ended up here, and where we want to go. You know, it's incredible, and that's why every week I'm going to be, you know, providing just really deep questions that we can ask ourselves to maybe open up, you know, and create those little cracks for the light to come in for us to see the truth of what's going on. So thank you so much. Does anyone else have any other questions, or want to, Bloom, do you have anything you want to say to that, or anyone else have questions they want to say to it?
Yeah, definitely. If anyone has any further questions or comments about it, yeah, I'd love to hear from people.
Yeah, or particularly to any of us, or any of the content that we covered, or just any concerns or questions in general that you may have that we can touch on. We're here for you guys.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hello, Jillian.
Hi. Hi, Kanyon, and I just want to thank you for not holding back and just really, you know, getting right in there and speaking on the most serious truths, because nothing gives me more relief than hearing the whole truth. it's been a long, hard road of embracing as much of it as I can. So I'm super grateful to hear everything that you've shared.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your heart, Jillian. It's amazing.
So what are the topics that are we talking about tomorrow? Or not tomorrow, next opportunity.
Next week, I think it'd be really cool to talk about overcoming fear, and just to address the current situation that we're in and all the uncertainty. And you know, the format that I'm going to keep running is I'm not going to come with like answers. I'm going to speak directly from personal experience and ask powerful questions for people to know their own truth, hopefully through this. You know, kind of some of the homework that I was hoping that some people might take with you for next week is, you know, how can we orient ourselves to figuring out our truth and finding our voice through all of this propaganda and information that's just bombarding us, you know. And I think it'd be really beautiful to see what people have to say with ways that you're doing that. And then also, you know, more homework for next week is like, you know, how can we feel safe? And what does it feel like, or actually, sorry, what does it feel like when we're unsafe? You know, what is that felt experience like? You know, and just to acknowledge that, because for me, I can't stand the toxic good vibe only culture. I want to talk about the shadow and the fear and the things and have that be acknowledged, because for me, that's where the real healing begins. I can't pretend like things aren't going on or that I'm some perfect fluffy Palladian star being or whatever. No offense to anyone else. But I like to talk about what's real and about like the real earth-based work that we're doing. And so I'm really grateful just to have you and Bloom here co-hosting this with me, because you guys both represent such powerful earth-based wisdom and actions that we can do.
On that too, it's amazing that this quarantine, so as an active Native person who taps into my skill set as sharing my voice and presence and energy, I'm a nomadic Native, I'm a Wile E. Coyote, a lot of my gigs shut down. Well, a lot of the amazing gatherings that were to transpire from spiritual, ecological, CIIS in Berkeley, having a spiritual ecology type spirituality conversation conference, and other amazing ecological system stuffs, and other conferences of an amazing intentionality, and some like mainstream Silicon Valley stuffs. Those have all stopped. However, now more people are getting online like this. I'm part of one group is calling itself Uplift Community, and hopefully in a couple of weeks we'll start going more public in doing exactly this. So I think your energy is awesome to your skills, and Bloom's skills and my offerings, and then my presence in the other circle is being a marketer and a networker and a connector, because this is other communities of holistic modalities and teachings. And the beautiful part is I have a feeling that all of the conversations that I'm in currently are all going to start coming together around these topics of how we're handling, navigating, and becoming better through this. And it's going to be really beautiful. I'm excited about this work going on. I've two other big groups of peoples that are going to have more Zoom-like meetings and teleconference-like presentations and panels, and it's just kind of exciting work. Never really been a huge fan of like Zoom teleconference, but hey, you know, we gotta stay safe in place, and I'm a moving being. And I used to be an introvert, and now I overextended myself into extroversion, where I synthesize energy from social environments, and I haven't had many social environments to get my charge. And now they're all coming, and I'm like, I asked for them, but come on, trickle in, please. I'm looking forward to these networks coming together, because from as simple as many of the teachings that we talk about, you know, you can snap one easily, but as a group and as a bundle, we are strong together. And that's the same thing with, think about watercraft with Thule. Tule is an amazing cultural resource here in the Bay Area, utilizing Tule for baskets, utilizing Tule for a bed mat, utilizing Tule for a dwelling, as insulation for roundhouses, as watercraft for Tule boats, for all of the amazing things. And from as simple as that tiny little fragile reed being such an amazing resource and so helpful. So yeah.
That's
But
powerful.
we need to care about our water, right?
Yeah, I'm glad that you're here in the circle with us and that we're all able to come together and support each other, you know. Next week, for everyone still listening and those who may listen later, I'm going to have one of my mentors. His name's Philip. He's a Sundance Lakota chief named Black Horse, and he's going to guide us through some meditations and some teachings, and you know, talk about the work that he's doing. And I'm really looking forward to this talk. So tune in next week, you guys. It's going to be super potent for sure.
I want to say something too. This is Mari.
Hi, Mari.
Hi. I think that in a sense, even though we're going through a lot of uncertainty, that, and I'm sure all of us know this really, that this issue has actually probably been a way for us to actually get people to sit up and take notice, because when people are going around as business as usual, and then we're trying to talk them into Indigenous rights, or trying to talk to them about different kinds of things like permaculture or starting a garden, they're not really that open. They're so busy paying their bills, doing all these things, watching TV, whatever it is, and not even paying attention to their family. And there's so much distraction because of having to earn so much money and the way things are laid out, that this is finally giving us the opportunity, even though it's very scary, it's finally giving us the opportunity where maybe enough people will start galvanizing their forces and start coming together and saying, hey, we do not want business as usual. We never wanted it. It's not part of where our heart's at. It hasn't been for a long time. And just because some people originally took over this land with a bunch of guns and forced their ways upon us, that's not really how we want to step into the future anymore. And we want to change everything. So because of that, I feel that more people are starting to talk about planting gardens. They're starting to talk about how we can do things differently, whether we want to live this way or not anymore. And I think most all of us have known we haven't wanted to live this way for quite a long time, but we're waiting for everybody else to catch up. And some people are thinking it's going to be business as usual, but the way things are going, even if we go back to not having a virus, some other things are so critical in the ecosystem that people are going to have to take notice at some point that this whole patriarchal and capitalism in the way it is not something that's in balance and harmony. So we're riding a wave right now that I think is really important to take notice, that now is the time where we're going to have the opportunity of being able to shift this more than we ever have. I mean, I would rather have Bernie maybe being elected too at the same time. However, I think that more people are available and more people will think of switching over to permaculture, starting gardens, getting together, using their efforts together, and tune out of this way we've been doing things. So in some senses, though it's very scary and the whole economy could collapse, I think we have our chance now, the chance we've been praying for to some degree, you know, at least me. Granted, I don't think anybody hoped it would come in this fashion, but I guess, you know, Spirit's hearing our call. So anyway, that's what I have to say. And I'm really happy to be here. So thank you.
Thank you, Marie. Yeah, it's so beautiful. You touched on, you know, just that aspect that we were all talking about throughout this talk today, you know, is questioning what is normal and abnormal for us as individuals in our family and in our culture, you know. And I think it's one of the most important discussions we can really have. because it's like, I don't think returning back to business as usual is going to cut it for us anymore. You know, we're fed up. We're tired of asking. We're so fucking sick of asking. And it's time that we were heard. And the only way we can be heard is in solidarity. So thank you for touching on that. Anahata, is that you? Are you sharing? I can barely hear you. You sound like a robot. Can you type your question or your comment? I'm gonna go ahead and mute you, honey.
Yeah, feel free to ask the question in typing. And I just want to take a moment to also say that a lot of people are calling their gardens right now victory gardens, which is a reference to during World War II, there was about 15 million families in the US growing their own food, and about 40% of the vegetables produced in the US were people growing food at home. And it ended up being about 9 to 10 million tons of vegetables that people grew themselves. And so there has been a time when all the people in the United States, or a large percentage of people, have been growing their own food because they had to. And then even before that, before colonization happened, people were growing their own food and living with the land for such a long time. So it's so much is possible. And yeah, it's very exciting what's possible just from our own homes and from our own communities too, and the communities we can build.
Absolutely. I mean, before grocery stores, right? Where was the food coming from? You know, and I think that planting a garden, you know, is the biggest act of revolution that we can really do. You know, it's like it's getting off the tit of the system. It's coming into our self-empowerment. You know, it's like planting these gardens and asking ourselves powerful questions, I think is exactly where we need to keep orienting ourselves. If I was to say, at least, you know, what might be best and most effective in coming into a place of solidarity and empowerment.
And
Kanyon, you look like you want to share. Yep.
Along that line, when we honor truth and history, we become familiar with these places. How many of you have heard about sudden oak death, where it's impacting the oaks, to where these primitive policymakers and decision makers are doing this poisoning and slash and squirt to kill these oaks. Yet, if you think about how well tended your garden is and how beautiful it is, and if you don't tend it and you don't engage upon it, it doesn't look as nice and as pretty, and it becomes infested with, you know, imbalance. So think about California being stewarded by indigenous peoples for thousands of years and then having been forcefully stopped and removed. Think about the Portola Trail just celebrating 250 years and the iconic occurrence that it's a celebration, because yes, it is of colonization and establishment of civilization, of colonial mentality. However, Native people stewarded the land with fire and with land management skills that are far beyond any of our current knowledge. And then think about the root of a lot of our agricultural practices. A lot of those are based on African American labor. When we think about some of the practices that we reap the benefit from when it comes to decisions and tools, practices and methodologies, it's on Black and brown bodies. And there's so many times where people are like, my family has been 3 generations, 4 generations, and we work the land. It's like, yeah, and yes, and so when we think about these practices and gardening methodologies, think about that truth and history about that work, and even just like pioneer species, or when we think about missionization, or these words that we use, or all of these things. So when we play into honoring truth and history, think about what ties into these things that we're so comfortable and complacent with. I'm just saying, ask. Don't stop asking. Don't stop learning. Don't get comfortable in what we know. Just keep growing. Keep striving to be a being that becomes familiar with more truth. Like we can only learn more truth with more perspectives. from multifaceted understandings and approaches towards things, but also just different perspectives, because yes, black and white exist. However, not everything's black and white. If I asked you, what does my hand look like? And I say, my truth, and this is the only truth that exists to me, is I see knuckles and fingernails. There are no such thing as fingerprints or creases in my hand, because I do not see them, nor do I know them. And therefore, if I hear what your answer is, and I hear what you say, yet you see fingerprints and creases and a palm, and I deny you your truth, am I right or are you? So thinking about these perspectives and thinking about, oh, some people are like, I see both, or I see none. But I mean, just take time to consider these things. The things that we don't always take time to consider.
Absolutely, it's powerful. Yeah, I'd like to open the floor to people who may have not spoken, especially to those who may be a little bit shy. I'm very outspoken, and I can talk forever, such as Kanyon and Robin. So yeah, please, those who may be a little shy or haven't spoken, I invite you to bring your voice into this circle. We won't bite, I promise.
I would love to share.
Hey, Teo.
Hi. Through some of the networking happening these days, I found your guys' site, and I'm really happy to be here. I thought each of you who've spoken shared really important points and did so in pretty brief amounts of time, a whole body of intelligence from indigenous to planting and human culture, or like self-reflection, so to speak. So thank you, all of you who've shared, and it feels like we're looking for, well, I'll speak for myself, I feel like I've been looking for answers, you know, having a lot of questions and resolving with doing self-care and listening. And another interesting point is that it's taken a tremendous amount of infrastructure to get to where we're at right now. You know, part of it was because thousands of years of people washing on rocks and then carrying the clothes back home from the river, you know? So it's like that as a metaphor, meaning life on Earth wasn't always so simple. And so in a lot of ways we can celebrate where we've arrived. And we can also see that that's made a big mark. And I'm in San Diego right now, and the indigenous of this area, the Kumeyaay, include in Mexico as well. It's a large region. And there's a book, Delfina Cuero, where she speaks of her grandmother and the stories that her grandmother taught her, and that she just got a little taste of that lifestyle. And she said that they would work for 4 hours a day. It was a migratory lifestyle. So here we have mountains where it snows, deserts, rivers, you know, grasslands, and coastal regions. And so they had a huge plethora of food and bioregions according to the time of year. But what I'm trying to say is we can't just immediately go back to that, and we can't just immediately leave where we're at. You know, I'm a gardener and a natural builder, stone worker, and it's like it takes years after planting a fruit tree for it to give fruit often. And so let's be patient with ourselves during this transition, and you know, let's pray with each other. Let's meditate together. Let's ask for ancient and new ways to be given. And I'm really grateful to be here with you guys. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your wisdom. Thank you so much for holding the middle ground, you know, walking that middle path. It's beautiful. And yeah, I think that's what this whole series is for, is just how we can plant seeds, you know, and reminding us that we were children once too, you know, to be gentle with ourselves, to be patient through this process. It's like you said, you know, it's not all going to shift overnight, you know. Our consciousness may shift overnight, but the physical representation of that manifestation will take time. And, you know, I think to be able to have this be receivable, these messages, we have to have a gentle approach to it. You know, a fierce, but yet gentle approach, such as a good lover.
Like, it takes that fierceness to dig large areas to open the ground, but, you know, then a gentle fingertip to place the seeds. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's nice
Absolutely.
to honor both.
Absolutely. I think, you know, our generation, especially, you know, like Bloom and Kanyon and I, you know, we're here to shake the foundations. You know, we're like swinging that hammer, you know, for our children to be able to plant the seeds that hopefully will bring us into the new dawn. That's my prayer for humanity, at least. So thank you for sharing that wisdom too.
Thank you, guys.
Anybody else who hasn't spoken or shared, please come forward.
And I'd also like to just let everyone know, I put a link to a Google Doc in the comments that has a bunch of links to resources from Kanyon and from me, and also permaculture tips, and also as many notes as I could possibly write from this talk. And we're going to be posting the video. So I posted it in the comments here. I'll also post it on the Facebook event page, so you have access to it. And also, if anyone feels called to donating to the three of us, it goes a long way and supports us. So we'll put our ways you can do that in the comments here, and also in the Google Doc, so that if you feel called to, you can. But yeah, we still have another like 20 minutes or so if anyone wants to ask any more questions or continue on with it.
Yeah, we can also end short if everyone's feeling complete. But I do, you know, I want to honor you guys' time. We do have till 9:30. So if anyone hasn't spoken that wants to ask a question or just be heard, you know, just to share your heart with us.
Well, hey,
Hey, Ken.
I'd really like to take a minute to express my gratitude to the three of you. You know, Kanyon, Sky, Robin, I really appreciate what you're doing. I think it's really a valuable thing, and the time is now for changes to be made. You know, this time when people have the moments really to reflect and think, where we're not rushing around from job, you know, whatever it is that we normally would be doing during this time. And really, Kanyon, for representing your heritage and, you know, talking to us about colonization and decolonization, which that's something I'd really like to know more about. You know, thank you so much. And really the cultural richness of the whole native and indigenous cultures, not just in, you know, North America, but across the world. It's just amazing to me. I live here in Canada with my mom, and both my father and my mom were very fascinated, and there's a library of books here that I have to choose from every day of Native American based books. And currently I'm reading this one here, I Heard the Owl Call My Name. Read it many years ago, and sort of reading it again today, and I just read something to you from it, because it really struck me today as kind of what I'm looking for, where I'm going, where I want to go with my life. You know, I want to have this kind of feeling, not the kind of I do or have had in the past. If you don't mind, just a moment here, and so I'll start here. The Indian knows his village and feels for his village, as no white man for his country, his town, or even for his own bit of land. His village is not the strip of land 4 miles long and 3 miles wide that is his as long as the sun rises and the moon sets. The myths are the village, and the winds and the rains. The river is the village, and the black and white killer whales that herd the fish of the inlet, the better to gobble them. The village is the salmon who come up the river to spawn. The seal who follows the salmon bites off his head. The blue jay whose name is like the sound he makes, quiss, quiss. The village is the talking birds. The owl calls the name of the man who is going to die. And the silver-tipped grizzly who ambles into the village, and the little white speck that is the mountain goat on Whoopsoo. And that's just one paragraph in this book. And really it's full of that. And many of the books about the native cultures to me are just full of wisdom. It's something that I resonate strongly with as the desire of how I would like to live my life. Really, and Robin's inspired me for many years. I met him in 2016 on the permaculture tour, as he mentioned, and we showed up there, my ex-partner and I, to do photography, and we photographed a permaculture event that was building a swale and planting a food forest at the Branch Mill Organic Farm, and really fell in love with the guy then, and have been a strong supporter of his. Had the privilege of doing some video work with him on several of his songs that now are these earworms that live in my head. Every once in a while they come back. Just love that. And Scott, I really meeting you here tonight. What a strong character you have, and such passion for what you believe in, and really appreciate all that you guys are doing. So much gratitude to all of you, and to be included here just to listen and to see your generation to the fore and push change. Glad to be here, glad to be part of it, and anything that I can do to help, I'm here.
Wow, thank you, Ken. Thank you so much for sharing your voice and your heart, man. That's a beautiful passage that you read from that book. I'd love to get a copy of that sometime. And yeah, thank you just for your acknowledgement and sincerity with what you have to share. Appreciate you, brother. Hope to see you here with us next week as well.
You bet.
I believe Jillian had her hand raised, so I wanted to offer the space for her. Go ahead.
Thank you. Is this program focused on real justice? Is that part of it?
Can you extrapolate a little bit?
Well, okay, Kanyon is, making all the critical points, and of course it's natural for everyone else to veer away from that, but I'd really like us to not veer away from that. Otherwise, what are we doing?
So are you asking if this is a place to take social action through this series?
Well, I mean, permaculture is some form of justice and restoration, but it's on Turtle Island, and there's genocide happening right now.
Yeah.
I don't want us to not think about that.
Right. I definitely feel like this is the space that we can share about that, and it's up to each individual to take the action that we can, from where we're at. And I think Kanyon and Robin happen to be, like, Robin, I know, is really amazing at helping people start up different organizations and to take action from when they are. And Kanyon is just extremely knowledgeable and has so much fire, and to inspire people to be able to land back, like she just said, into the indigenous heart that we all share, because we all come from indigenous roots in one way or another. I can't tell you. I can't tell you what to do, Jillian. This space.
It's just that like the administration is taking advantage of this shelter in place to rage through indigenous territory in more than one way right now.
It's all indigenous territory, isn't it? you know?
Yes, we know that. That's not what I'm talking about right now. Yes,
Right.
this is Turtle Island, yes.
So I mean, this space, we didn't necessarily make the intention to get into 5G and to coronavirus and things like that, and to get into so much of the administration as the intention was really set to figure out what we can do within ourselves from where we are at within the quarantine space.
Well, this is like an earth justice thing, and on the suffering from climate crisis, how do we not stay focused on Indigenous truth that's happening right now? It's not somebody's heritage, it's happening right now.
I'd love for Kanyon to touch up more on this because she happens to be the most Indigenous of us all here from this land. And I feel like she has a lot that she wants to share. I can see her bubbling up over there.
Okay.
It is true. It is true because it all ties into that truth. And so when we tie into that truth, it's like, okay, from as simple as I'll give the stereotype of a being that is not anybody here, ideally. And you know what, sometimes we've all been this person. I'll say the new age, recently woke, recently reconnected, got a sample of a little bit of spirituality, started engaging in spiritual tourism being who's like, oh my gosh, I'm reconnecting to this wisdom, and I recognize that we're all, all humans of the earth, and we all need to like engage in this practice of like connecting to the land. And then when the question is posed about, well, we are on Turtle Island, we are on stolen lands. Well, yeah, but that's not now. It's like, but every decision and every action has been playing a part. So by becoming familiar with the Indigenous peoples of whose land we're on and the current struggles, we can then start reconnecting to that pain, that truth, that what are the current issues of the Native peoples? What is the struggle? Because when you think about Indigenous peoples and Indigenous cultures, we make up less than 2% of the Americas, less than 5% of the world, yet we spend most of our lives protecting over 85% of the world's biodiversity with little to no resources. So the question around this work that we could be doing personally in this quarantine is, how do we honor truth and history and start questioning what can change? Not just capitalism, not just that business that, well, let's use McDonald's real quick. McDonald's curbed a decision about a certain type of potato that's used. So they don't use potatoes that are bruised. So those bruised potatoes go to trash. They don't even go to compost, let alone they're manipulated horribly. But the standard being set that a business that is profit driven can curb what food is being produced. And the same way when we want pretty little vegetables and we're being told to eat the rainbow, but all of the fruit is genetically modified to be heavier for profit. We can have community members step up and stand strong for healthier, nutritious, dense foods and change policy around that. Same thing with water rights. Native peoples are fighting for the water. Yes, we need bodies on the line to stop these decisions, but we also need powerful people who have amazing skills to fight on our side to be of resource, because many people, like there are times that my elders and my mentors will say land back, and then the people who benefit off of the land, i.e. settlers, and they hear them like, what do you natives need? What do you natives need? And the land back, and then the settlers like, oh, I can't do that. And then the elders are like, well, we're not going to do the labor for you. Give it back or go away. Don't ask us what we need. And that person goes, well, I tried, and they wander off. And it's like, this is the time where we are introspective to be like, okay, how can I be aligned? Okay, let's think about United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. Let's think about the rights of nature. How can we all be in community together to fight for the rights of nature? Let's start being proactive in utilizing our skills and our strengths. And we could do it anywhere. Plumbers. Think about plumbers and our amazing writers. Writers and plumbers can get together to set standards for low flush toilets that use the gray water from your sink from washing your hands to go into the back of the toilet, or rain collection. Oh, wait, it's illegal in some places. Okay, then change the rules. Fight back. Stand on that line. Write the letters. engage in these practices that change things and use your skills wherever you have them. And some of us are introverts, some of us are extroverts, some of us have writing skills, some of us have talking skills, some of us are artists. Okay, some of us are media, like media designers, image manipulators. Think about language revitalization for Native peoples. I've been bugging my friends, like, make some memes about language. Okay, what if there's a skilled non-Indigenous media content creator and they want to get connected with Native peoples? They can say, hey, are you working, like, maybe they get to know their neighbor who's a Native person who's working on language. Hey, I got some ideas around education tools. Let's work together and share our skills. Okay, so the media production individual can work their chops on creating memes and little animations, and the Native person gets to get their language out there and practice and engage. Like, all of us can do these little tiny little bits to build community and align, because think about, from as simple as a meme that can be shared and the simple effort of language revitalization of one individual or one family, and it getting propagated out there where people are like, I didn't think about that. And I'm for all of us finding what skills and mentalities that we have. I'm not trying to tell someone who, you know, has scoliosis to come to Indian Canyon and rake. I'm not. Yes, we need people to help manage the land. Yes, we need volunteers to engage in stream restoration and fire prevention. We need bodies available to volunteer to help steward land. But I'm not going to set an inquiry or a demand for someone to fill a role that maybe they're not able-bodied to do, let alone compelled to do. We need to look in ourselves, find what's available to ourselves, what kind of work, how much emotional labor, spiritual labor, effort. And when we do that shadow work and that introspection, like I said, with that book, Me and White Supremacy and White Fragility, some of that work is checking our privilege, checking our implicit bias, checking everything we've ever been taught in these systems. Our education system, Western settler colonial science, is so inherently and environmentally racist, and it's in denial of sacred holistic systems. Like, yes, scientific theory, break apart, put together, prove said theory is functioning and works. It works. However, it's not the only thing that is viable to be educated by. Yet scientific theory says this is this and everything else is null. It's like, so questioning why things are the way they are. Same thing with archaeology. All Native Americans came across the Bering Strait. Oh, really? Then can you prove, like, the tool markings on the mastodon that's over 100,000 years old in the Americas? Can you prove the Thule elk and its presence in California over 15,000 years ago, which is older than the Bering Strait theory? Thule elk are called that due to predation, and humans hunted Thule elk, so therefore humans have been hunting Thule elk for them to have that behavior of hiding in the Thule. But everyone said that was fact until proven otherwise. So why can't our truths be accepted as true and factual from the beginning? Let's question things. And so, yes, justice is part of my goal. And I think in our circle, environmental justice, and we can get on social issues, but some of us still have to do some introspective work to find out if we even know what that means. So I'm down for saying that it should be centered on all of it. However, some people haven't gotten to that point in their life where they might be ready to engage on that yet, because they're still working on themselves. And we have to be loving and healing and intentional, and we don't know what we don't know. Yeah. But now that we are engaging in these conversations and starting to become familiar, we're going to have to hold each other accountable, and we're going to have to challenge each other, saying, all right, what are we doing? And yeah, so thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, Jillian, that's what we're doing here, is questioning the narrative and really finding ways that we can, you know, build the resiliency and the agency to look within ourselves and ask these powerful and tough questions, so that we can come into a center that allows us to have the foundation where we can reach out to support others. You know, put on your oxygen mask first before putting on someone else's, right? You know, what good are we to other people if we're dead? We're not. We have to fulfill our basic needs. We have to be able to not only question the narrative, and fulfill our basic needs, but we also have to be able to come from a very grounded place where we don't feel like we need to be outraged, but we can actually be walking that middle path, like Ken was talking about, or sorry, that like Theo was talking about, to be able to come from a very, very receivable place. Just being angry about things, it's not doing any good, you know, unless we're an actual activist taking action in the world. Then we can be angry and then we'll be heard and our actions will be met, where spirit meets action, you know? So like, yeah, it's this, so the intention of this series every Friday is to question that narrative and to cultivate that inner agency to make the changes that we need to in this world.
I would like to say one more thing. This is Mari.
Hey, Mari.
I think also, oh, did I interrupt you, by the way? Sorry.
Nope, you're good.
Oh, okay. The other thing is, besides that, because I think we all have a whole laundry list of things we'd love to change, I think your questions were really good, looking at that internally. And also knowing that a lot of people that we are hoping will kind of get on the bandwagon with us usually only change through their pain points. Mm-hmm. So if something is affecting them right now, then they seem to be willing to change in that, and they usually won't go too much farther. But sometimes when you start addressing those pain points, then they start opening up their heart to start seeing the bigger picture. And so maybe right now we're scared of not having food, or so we're going to start gardening. And then as you start engaging that conversation about ways that gardening happened, or ways Indigenous people gardened and why they did it, that the conversation starts organically opening up in a way that we don't, yes, it's good to introduce a lot of other things, but a lot of people are going to be, I feel, it's called skillful means in Buddhism, but they're going to be more open to engaging in those things as they start to have the experience of those pain points, the experience of feeling vulnerable, because they're going to start looking for that. So it's not like maybe we have to be as heavy-handed with saying, okay, now look at this, look at this, look at this. It might be able to open up at least somewhat organically through being terrified, having pain points, searching for answers, looking for people that are more grounded in ways that seem to assuage their fears and give them more stability and more understanding. So I think there are skillful ways of doing these things. And I think the more we look at the possibility of how we can be skillful in these things, and maybe it's subversive really, but I think that we may get farther in that, because a lot of, otherwise if you're just telling somebody they're wrong, somehow they don't want to hear that. And that doesn't mean they're not wrong, but a lot of people don't want to hear it in that way. So I think that trying to figure out how to communicate in ways and how to open up those conversations with the most bang for our buck, as they say, or the most skill, with is a really something to look at. Anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, and bringing that to attention. We are running short on time, so I think that'll be the last question that we'll have. But, with that being said, it's, especially as a great example with addiction, addiction becomes a platform for us to take action upon. And the addiction was never the problem. The substance was never the problem. It's how we use to cope the underlying issues that we're afraid to face. And a lot of the comforts that we have, and a lot of the illusions of security, and a lot of the other things that, is prevalent in our culture, are things covering up us from having to look at where we've been and what we've done. It's to keep us complacent. It's to keep us, to keep us orderly and whatnot, and to not ask the powerful questions that we're asking here. And so I think that you're right, through this giant pain body, this collective pain body that we're all experiencing right now, it's creating ripples. It's creating ripples in the norm. And people will be more inclined to pay attention and to look within and to do these things so that they can realize their own truth at the core of who they are, the core of their being. And, you know, the intention here is to just ease that process to where we can not only, you know, be supported in this process of unraveling who we really are, but also find enjoyment in it. That's why we call it enjoy the process. Because for me, like, this is where I find enjoyment, is going within and, you know, kind of treating myself like an RPG character in Final Fantasy or whatever video game you want to call it, you know, and like just tweaking the algorithms that my own patterning and conditioning has set. For me, I find enjoyment in that. And I find the most growth and healing, and I find the most, you know, I find the most strength to take action when I'm doing this. So yeah, I'm complete with that. If anyone else has anything, last comments, gratitude, anything at all, you know, the space is open for next, let's call it minute or two.
Much gratitude. Good job, everyone. Beautiful work.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
There's
Hands lifted in appreciation.
Thank you. There's projects going on in San Diego. Is there a place I could email you guys or something?
Yeah, I will post my email in the comments here. Also, just on the Facebook page, you can comment and we'll get in touch. I actually know of some great projects in San Diego area and all over for that matter. If anyone's looking to connect with amazing projects, there's some search engines that are specifically for that. One is newmundo.org. You can look for the location, what specifics you're looking for, if it's more of a co-working place or a permaculture place, or it's like a search engine for helping you find exactly what you're looking for around positive impact and sustainability. And then there's also the Global Eco Village Network and the Fellowship for Intentional Communities. And so all three of those websites have search engines where you can find places close to where you are or anywhere that you're going. And yeah, just to touch on what we were just talking about too, this is our first of many talks like this, and we'll have other presenters on future ones, and we're gonna get to go deeper into a lot of these topics and conversations. And if there's anything particularly that anyone wants to dive deeper into, just let us know and we can plan for that as well.
Yeah, we're going to be tailoring it, you know, to, it's going to be transforming and constantly shifting and evolving. It's going to be focused on the deep inner work, permaculture, and Indigenous Insights, of course. But, you know, there'll be room for the theme of each call that we're going to have week by week by week by week. And I'm hoping to have like really cool homework kind of for you guys to do. I'll find a better word because no one likes doing homework, but you know what I'm saying?
Home fun.
Yeah.
Calls it home fun.
Yeah, home fun, exactly. Home pleasure. Home leisure. But yeah, thank you all so much for being here. This has all been really exciting. So honestly, this is my first time holding a Zoom meeting. I hold integration circles, harm reduction classes, peer support groups, like in person. And this is my first time leading a Zoom call. So I was pretty nervous coming into this, and I felt really empowered as soon as we were just rolling. So thank you all for your patience and support in this. Much love to all of you. All right.
Mari's asking if there's a Facebook group associated with this. There's not yet. There's just the Facebook page that we made, but that's a great idea. We could make a Facebook group.
Yeah, this seems like it's going to really turn into something. I don't know. I have a great feeling about this. So maybe we should do a Facebook page or group or something like that. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. But we'll work it out. We're refining details. So help us. Much love to you guys. I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting. Call this a close. Ceremony is over. Much
Thanks,
love to you guys.
everyone. Thanks, Kanyon. Thanks, Sky. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you guys so much. Ciao.
Yeah.